The question is, how do you deal with the anxiety that comes from waking up and being on a roll and realizing that when you're making things happen, it's easy to look back and realize how much of your life you wasted. And that makes you present to how potentially little time you have left and how much there is to do in the little time that you have. I can so relate to this. So relate to this. The few things I want to say about this is that I don't think that our experience of feeling anxiety about getting it all done before your life is over, or getting it all done in the time that you have, I don't think it's unique. I think that that is something that starts to happen when you feel like your life is on a roll and you're not present to misery, but you're actually present to power and joy and all the cool possible things that you could do. Does the anxiety, or how do you make the anxiety go away? I don't think you can. I think that that is a very normal thing to feel when you're a big thinker and you become present to the fact that when you put in the work and when you focus, you really are capable of creating just about whatever you want in your life. And that's both empowering and daunting and terrifying as hell. And so you can't get away from that anxiety, but you can respond to the trigger. I often feel what you're talking about when I'm on an airplane. And maybe it's because I feel very vulnerable and out of control when I get on a plane and I click the buckle and I realize this puppy could go down. And then I think about, okay, I spent 49 years here. There's so much more I wanted to do. So I can relate to this. So there's two things to this. One is being present to time passing and the fact that we're all gonna die and that your life is a gift. When you get present to that, that's the biggest motivator on the planet. And when you feel one of those moments, what I do is I shrink it down and I try to find something in this moment that I'm incredibly grateful for, so that if it were to end right now, then all would be well. I think about the sunset I'm looking at. I find a picture of my kids and my husband. I think about, the lives that have been touched by the 5-second rule. And that gratitude in the moment allows my mind to not go psycho thinking about the big vastness around life and those big topics. So that calms me down immediately. That's number one. Number two, I think a slightly different question than it's probably anxiety, but I think it has more to do with momentum and how when you start to get unstuck and you start to see things happening, you'll notice that things feel like they start moving faster, as if you are on a treadmill and somebody has secretly come up and turned it up on you. And there are days where we're moving through our day. Like this morning was one of them. We're getting ready for this live training, and all of a sudden I caught myself almost about ready to hyperventilate because I wasn't present to this. I was present to what happens when we have 1,000 people show up and where are we gonna hold? You kind of speed it up on yourself. So when that happens, I know that I'm in the future, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I need to be right here and right now. And that when you start having big things happen and when you start feeling unstuck and when things start moving, the momentum, because an object in motion tends to stay in motion, your anxiety will make it roll faster. That will not make you effective. You have to slow it down immediately. Just in the case of getting overwhelmed by the big themes in life, when you start to feel like things are going too fast, oh my God, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough time. No, yes, you do. Slow it down, okay? I'm always looking for new ways to explain the power of the 5-second rule and the power of 5-second decisions. And I read something that Tim Ferriss said that really resonated with me. And he had this one line buried in a podcast somewhere that just jumped out, and it's stuck. And what he said is, he said something about how there's a gap between the world and the things that trigger you and your response. And your entire life is that gap. When you start to, this is not what he said, I kind of identified this gap, and I, of course, intrinsically was like, well, absolutely, that's the 5-second window between instinct or stimulus and your reaction. And when you start to understand that your whole life plays out in this 5-second gap, and that there's a gap that's 5 seconds long between fear and courage. And there's a gap that's 5 seconds long between self-doubt and confidence. That is your life. And what's super cool about understanding that your whole life is inside this gap is it's so small, everybody, that you have the ability to control it. Life's always gonna throw triggers at you, and there will always be all kinds of cool things that inspire you, your wisdom. And you get to choose what happens in that gap. Do you succumb to an excuse, or do you push yourself forward? When you start to speak up in business, you'll be shocked at how you start to speak up in your relationships. When you start to make hard phone calls, whether it's in a selling situation, you'll be surprised at how you'll start to close the gap and have hard conversations in your personal life. And so that gap is everywhere, and it's the same everywhere. And when you start to go to work in controlling how you live in that gap between stimulus or idea and your response, that's where the magic is. And that's what you're experiencing. In this video, I'm going to show you the specific way that you can use the 5-second rule to stop doubting yourself and worrying so much. Now, a lot of people will tell you, oh, just think positive, or try not to worry. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. And the reason why it's not easy is because it doesn't work. And actually, research shows that when you try to ignore your worries, it can actually make them worse. Look, I understand this topic more than most people because I struggled for decades, not only with worrying and self-doubt, I actually suffered from anxiety and panic attacks for almost 25 years. And in fact, I took Zoloft for 2 decades to control my anxiety. Using the 5-second rule, I've not only been able to stop worrying and doubting myself, I've cured myself of anxiety, and I've been off meds for more than 4 years. I'm panic attack free, and I almost never, ever worrying about anything. And you can teach yourself to do the exact same thing using the rule. First, here's what I want you to know. You're not a worrier. A lot of us call ourselves a worrier, right? Oh, I'm a worrier. You're not a worrier. You have a habit of worrying. That's a very big difference. You've allowed your mind to drift and linger on negative thoughts so many times, it's now a pattern of behavior that you repeat, and you don't even realize it. And that's actually good news, because that means that you and I can use the science of habits to break the habit of worrying and the habit of doubting yourself. In the language of habit research, the 5-second rule is what psychologists call a starting ritual. It's a tool that you can use that will interrupt the negative thought patterns that are encoded in your brain as habits and trigger positive new thought and behavior patterns. The 5-second rule is shockingly effective because it works with all the latest research about habits. What I've learned using the 5-second rule is that I do in fact have control over what I think. And when you use the 5-second rule, you'll discover that you do too. Here's how you're going to use the rule. The moment that you feel your thoughts drift, and have you ever noticed how worrying and self-doubt, they have a way of literally like taking you away from a situation. You can feel your mind go from the present moment to drifting to something negative. Maybe you're sitting at a meeting at work and suddenly you start talking down at yourself and doubting yourself. It happens like that. But the moment that you catch yourself do it, that's a moment of tremendous power. You have a decision to make. You can either sit there and listen to the worry and listen to the self-doubt and let it hijack you, or you can make a decision to assert control. That's when you use the rule. You're going to use the countdown trick, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's essential. Counting backwards interrupts the negative thought pattern. It's also going to awaken your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that you need to override a bad habit and replace your bad habit with a positive new one. So every time you feel your thoughts drift to something negative, or you find yourself worrying about things you can't control, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it'll switch the gears in your brain, it'll interrupt the negative thought pattern, it'll activate your prefrontal cortex, and you've just created a starting ritual that will prime your mind to accept a more positive thought. That is how you use the rule to change. Some days you might use the rule 20 times to interrupt your habit of worrying and doubting yourself.
How you felt about 2018, or when you ranked your aspirations for 2019, you were a little bummed because everything was super low, and it made you go from feeling excited about doing a mindset reset to feeling really negative about it. First of all, it's incredibly normal when you stop and pause and assess how you feel about your own life and the state of it. It's incredibly normal for you to rank it low, because most of us walk around with a very negative viewpoint about our own lives. That's number one. And that's a mindset and a perspective that we are going to change. Number two, one of the things that has helped me a lot when I get into moments in my life where I get present to disappointment, where I feel very sad, where I start to beat myself up over where I'm at in my life versus where I thought I would be. Specifically, what comes to mind is when I was facing bankruptcy and I was 40 years old, and we, had 3 kids, and I thought I should be in a different place in my life. And thinking and judging my current state against where I thought I would be, it made me sink even lower. And so what you're experiencing is very normal. The fastest way to stop beating yourself up, the fastest way to stop feeling regret over where you're at in your life right now, is to literally say to yourself, I did the best I could. I did the best I could. Because guess what? If you could have done more, you would have. And so if you literally just accept where you are, you're not feeling connected, you're not where you wanted to be, you're disappointed with how your life has turned out up until this moment, that's okay. But the first thing that you need to do to free yourself of that negativity is to say, hey, if I was capable of doing more, I would have. I remember there was a moment in time where, this is a really stupid example, but there was a moment in time where a lot of our friends started buying bigger houses or joining private clubs, or they were able to take their families on very expensive vacations. And that was just something that was not a possibility for me and Chris at the time. And I remember spending years beating myself up, years comparing myself to the people that had nicer clothes, nicer cars, nicer watches, nicer vacations. And it wasn't until I said to myself, well, if I could have afforded those things, I would have bought them, maybe. If I could have afforded to join the club, I might have. I couldn't afford to do it. And there's a massive amount of freedom that comes when you just stop beating yourself up and you acknowledge that if you could have changed it sooner, you would have. But here's what's cool. Once you say that, now you can change it now. And that's what this program's about. So cool to feel the sadness, okay and normal to feel the disappointment, and then say to yourself, hey, I am where I am. If I could have done more, I would have. And now it's time to move on, because guess what? You can do more. You signed up for this program. You're taking your life and the things that you want to change about it very seriously. And the skills that we're going to teach you are going to help you. They're going to help you free yourself from the mental jail. Because I'm going to tell you something. If you spend the next year, which many of you were going to, you were going to spend the next year telling yourself, my life sucks, I should have done something sooner. You are going to spiral in your own head as you beat yourself up over and over and over again. And that's got to stop. The reason why you haven't changed your life to date, you want to know why? It's because your mindset has blown. It's because you live up here. You don't live out in the world, you live up here. And up until this moment, up here has been a very negative place. And I guarantee you, if you were to put your own thoughts in someone else's mind, you know what you would say to me? Well, there's no way in hell Mary would lose that weight if she thought the things that I thought, because I'm constantly saying to myself, I'm not good enough, I'm not this, I'm not capable, I should have done it last year, why didn't I do this sooner? The more you think like that, the more stuck you're going to stay. And so that's why it's critical to acknowledge that the reason why you haven't changed sooner and the reason why your life is in the state that it's in is because of how you think. How you think is stopping you from taking action. You're convinced that you're not good enough. You're convinced that it's too late. You're convinced that other people are going to judge you. And I'm here to tell you it's total baloney. Next question.
I'm writing that one down. That was a good little rant.
I need water because I'm feverish. I can feel it. Oh, I'm good, thanks you. But you know what I do need is we need to find a cord for this this iPhone because the low battery just happened.
Okay, it's all good. So here's another question. We had from someone on Facebook as well. I'm having trouble naming one thing I want to change or improve in the category of self-worth.
Oh, anybody else having trouble naming one thing in the category of self-worth that you want to improve? Anyone? Ooh, lots of hearts. Okay, so whoever asked the question, I'm having trouble naming one thing I want to improve in the category of self-worth.
Yep, and they go on to say, I simply want to have self-worth because I feel I lost it 8 years ago.
I feel I lost my self-worth 8 years ago. What else is this person saying?
Not really sure how I could break that category down. Any examples? Or is my answer to just have some of it back? So going back to the visualization, how do you break down something that is specific when it comes to improving and increasing your self-worth?
Improving and increasing your self-worth. How do you break it down? Okay, so one of the fastest ways to figure out a goal, if you're just flummoxed, you're like, I just don't even know what to work on here. I feel like I'm in such a hole. I don't even know how to begin. You can do it one of two ways. Because it's not necessarily about a massive transformation. I'm all about incremental progress. And so one of the things that you can do if you're stuck is you could say, okay, I don't know what the heck to do about increasing my self-worth. So here's how you start. If you had more self-worth, what are the things that you would be doing that you're not doing right now? So project yourself into a future state where your self-worth is awesome. What are the things that you do when you live in that state? And that visualization and jumping into the future should give you a clue as to what changes you need to make right now. That's one way that you can handle it. And you can do that with friendships. If your friendships were a 10, what are the things that you would be doing that you're not doing now? If your love life were a 10, what are the things you would be doing that you're not doing now? If your work was a 10, what are the things you would be doing that you're not doing now? That is a way for you to reverse engineer what your goals can be. Another thing that you could do is you could do the opposite. You could say to yourself, how has having no self-worth held me back? Like, get in touch with the pain. And we're going to talk a lot about this tomorrow when we dig deeper into mindset. Get in touch with the pain of what has having low self-worth cost you? How have you held yourself back? And by getting in touch with the pain, you might be inspired to say, wow, I want to stop doing that to myself.
You know, it's impossible to go through life without feeling stressed out. I mean, it's just going to happen to you. And what's fascinating about stress is that most of us have two pretty predictable responses. First of all, we go into this bunker mode where we feel so stressed out, we start to isolate ourselves.
6:30, dinner with me. I'm booked.
You know, we work all the time. And the second thing that we do, we think about what can we remove from our plate. The last thing that you want to do when you're stressed out is add something, right? Maybe not. The idea that I want to introduce you today requires you to do the opposite. There's something that you actually need to add into your life in moments of stress, and it's also going to require you to fight that feeling of wanting to just bunker in and isolate yourself. And it turns out that one of the best stress relievers on the planet is something that most of us don't ever do, and that is seek out time with friends when we feel totally stressed out. When you're doing twice as much work as you normally do, or you're feeling twice as much stress as you normally feel, studies at Harvard show that what you need is you need to see your friends twice as much. Now, Sean Anker is a really famous researcher and best-selling author at Harvard, and he studied this phenomenon. He looked at people that were stressed at schools and in call centers and in the military and in banks and in almost every single industry. What he discovered is that the most successful people, the people that were the best at selling, the people that were the most resilient, the people that had the best ability to deal with stress when times got tough were the ones that saw their friends the most. It was the people with the tightest social connections that had the ability to weather the storms that life throw at us. The takeaway is really simple. It's really easy to isolate yourself. What I want you to do is I want you to actually make a more concerted effort to re-engage. We don't talk about the isolation piece a lot. I bet you have friends right now that are super stressed out that you haven't heard from in maybe even a month. And the reason why you haven't heard from them has nothing to do with you. It's they're doing what we all do. They're isolating themselves. And guess what they need? They need you. They need more connection. And that's exactly what you need when you feel stressed out too. So here's my challenge for you. I want you to write down 3 people that when you hang out with them, you feel energized, that when you have plans with them, you're excited about seeing them. When this video ends, reach out to them. That's right, pick up the phone, send them a text. I want you to invite them to do something. Go out to lunch, go for a walk in the woods, get a cup of coffee, go out to dinner. Even if you're not stressed out, I guarantee you at least one of the 3 people that you're gonna reach out to needs you.
Number 1, work ethic. I'll outwork anybody. I know that the secret to success is not getting it right. It's actually getting after it until you get it done. And so work ethic, work ethic, work ethic. Anything is possible if you are willing to give up your timeline and you're willing to put your head down and put the work in. The second thing is I know that failure and screw ups are a massive part of paving the road to success. Like, I'm not a lucky person that can just study stuff and implement it and then it all works out. I have this deeply personal process that everybody shares, by the way, of studying everybody who does it really well and then implementing their best practices and then tweaking it so that it feels right. And so failure, screw ups, detours, all of it is part of the road to success. The third thing is, and I write about actually all of this stuff in the High 5 Habit. There is this mindset trick that I created that is an entire chapter in the High 5 Habit that I created when I was launching the 5-Second Rule book, which the hardcover book was a huge failure, believe it or not. And when we launched the hardcover, it originally, the bottom line is that when I launched the hardcover, Evan, the hardcover was not available for sale when my marketing kicked off. Like there was a screw up with Amazon. I started marketing. I told everybody to go buy it and it read as out of stock. Couldn't even pre-order it. It was like out of stock. Huge mix up on my part. I was a self-published author. And as my attitude was going down the drain, I literally started saying this thing to myself on repeat. And everybody, you should just steal this. It's like chapter 13 in the book. This moment is preparing me. This moment is preparing me. This moment is preparing me for something amazing that hasn't happened yet. And every single thing in my life that has been a struggle or a hardship or a heartbreak or anything, even losing people I love to the disease of hopelessness and addiction, those moments of going through tremendous grief and heartache prepared me to help other people to do it. And so when you can start to ground yourself in this idea that I never really liked, by the way, Evan, that whole phrase, life is happening for me, because there's a lot of that I don't want it. I don't believe it's for me. But there's something about tweaking it like this is preparing me. It allows me to take control of a situation I don't like, I didn't want, I didn't plan for, it's not what I deserve. But if it's preparing me for something, it flips my mindset into this attitude that allows me to endure it and allows me to have perspective that someday I will look back on it and understand the wisdom that I gained from it. And so, the failure of the hardcover with the 5-second rule prepared me for something all right. It introduced me to my business model that has a huge partnership with Audible. Like the 5-second rule, because of the failure of the hardcover, became the most sold and listened to audiobook of the year of all of 2017 and opened up a whole new business model. And, which, by the way, is still bearing out, everybody, because as the book sells out around the world, it's the audiobook. Like, we were the number one selling audiobook in the world last week, number two selling title on Amazon because of the audiobook. And so there's a whole new business model I learned. And so you need to understand that every failure that you have, everybody, it is actually preparing you for something else. That's number three, that sort of attitude. The other thing, honestly, is I've been successful in spite of myself, Evan, because it's only since learning the high five habit that I have been able to truly reset my default thinking and become a person whose default is to cheer for herself. Do I have insecurities? Yes. Do I have self-doubts? Yes. But the one thing I don't do anymore is I do not beat the hell out of myself anymore. You see, even all those years, everybody, when my speaking career was taking off, I was literally my biggest critic. It was never enough. It was, well, I kind of, even though the audience is giving me a standing ovation and the clients just hired me to do 7 more events, Evan, I'm like, well, God, I really screwed up minute 43. I really blew it that time. Like, I was relentless with myself. And there's a difference, everybody, between having a level of excellence in what you do and high standards, which I know Evan has a level of excellence in what he does. And he also marries his process with excellence. But that's very different than relentless self-criticism. You know what I mean? And what happens with relentless self-criticism, self-hatred, self-doubt, all of that beatdown is that, number one, you slow down your progress. Number two, you miss opportunities. Number three, you lose inspiration and motivation because everything is a grind. Number four, you have no joy in what you're doing because you are singularly focused on finding stuff that's not going right. And number five, you literally will never be happy and content because you're not allowing yourself to celebrate and empower yourself for all the things you're doing right, which only creates more positive momentum. And it was the high five habit, something I created by mistake in April of 2020 that completely changed my habits, my attitude. The reason why this is the most successful thing I've ever done is because I'm different. Using the high five habit, I've asked for help. I've gotten out of the insecurity of needing to do it all myself. I'm enjoying the process of it, even though it's kind of a show behind the scenes. Like, this is just the greatest gift in the world because it changes how I experience my life. And that's the biggest thing, everybody. That's the final takeaway in terms of success and why most of you don't have the success you deserve, because you're too hard on yourself. You are focused on what's not working instead of celebrating what is. You're beating the hell out of yourself every day, which is demotivating. If you want to be more successful than you could ever imagine, you must read the high five habit. You must start to put these practices in place. You must start to see the good. You must start to flip your attitude when it's going down. And you must be able to use the tools in here to become somebody that is supportive, encouraging of yourself.
I love it. And just to speak to your willingness to ask for help, as well as just the work ethic, back in Napa, one of our field trips was to go hot air ballooning. And you and I are both afraid of heights. It's like, okay, we're in the same balloon together. And it was like a half hour, 45-minute ride to get there. And Mel's sitting next to me. And we're in this little van. And she pulls out her notebook. She's like, okay, Evan, tell me everything that's wrong with my YouTube channel. I don't have the answers, but I'm going to take notes. I'm going to make sure that this happens. So be honest and tell me, like, rip it apart. It's like, okay. And we did a jam session all the way up. And so I love how you are constantly trying to learn and maximize the time. And even if it's something that is, you're not going to be the one updating thumbnails and tweaking titles. And even though you don't fully understand it.
We were today.
There we go. I love it.
Yep.
But
No,
just
I think that's it too, Evan. And you're like this. Thank you for the compliment. You're the exact same. That's why you see it in me. We are both learners. Like, I think this is the greatest thing in the world, everybody. To like, of course I want to update thumbnails and obsess over titles because that's the art of this. And unless you're willing to be a student of what you're doing, you'll never be able to teach the things that you've learned. And so, I think that, Evan is such a student of his craft. It's why he has so much success and he's having a lot of fun because he brings a student mindset to what he's doing.
Most successful people, the talented ones, it's people who continued to push forward despite the no's that they hear. And you're going to hear a lot of no's, a ton of no's. Do you understand? Most of us have Oprah on a vision board, or we really admire Oprah. You admire Oprah. I mean, who the hell doesn't? She's one of the most remarkable people on the planet. Do you know that when she started out her career, she was kicked out of the anchor chair at WJZ-TV in Baltimore after just a few months of landing that role? Do you know that Madonna, after dropping out of college, she took a job at Dunkin' Donuts and she was fired because she got jelly on a customer? Or how about Bill Gates and Paul Allen, the co-founders of Microsoft? Do you know that they started a company called Trafo Data? Trafo Data. Have you ever heard of it? Yeah, me neither. That's because it sucked. It was a gigantic no. But it led to something else. How about Katy Perry? Katy Perry, she sold more than 83 million singles and 6 million albums in the US alone. But it's been a long road to fame, people. Her first album was a failure, and she was dropped by Columbia Records. That's a gigantic no. Decca Records, they rejected the Beatles in 1962. I bet you they are really still regretting that if they're even in business. I could go on and on and on. Elvis Presley in 1954, he auditioned to sing at a club, and you know what he was told? That he was told he should stick to truck driving because he pretty much sucked as a singer. They told that to the king of rock and roll. And so I kind of feel like no's, whether you're getting rejected in the dating world, or you're getting rejected applying for jobs, or you're getting rejected as you talk to people about your business, or you're getting rejected by people that you are talking about your dreams with, okay? Tell me the last thing that you were rejected from. Tell me the last thing. What were you rejected from? I can tell you I did not get renewed at CNN after 4 years of working for them. That's a no, thank God, because I jumped right over to Audible Originals and I would not be able to do a talk show if I was still under contract with CNN. Hallelujah. And so one of the things I want you to understand is that you have to reframe the no's that you've gotten. Every man or woman that has said no to you, that has rejected you, thank God, because that's not who you're supposed to be with. And if you're honest with yourself, when you look back at who you were in that relationship, you probably weren't the real you. And if you were the real you, the person said no because they're not a match for you. Terrific. You have to expect a no because the right people are looking for you. The right people want to partner with you. The right people want to help you on your path to making your dreams come true. And so reframing no's and understanding that if you want to be successful, you're going to have to rack up a ton of no's. Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five. I would expect at least 23 no's in a row. That's what I would expect. And I think that expecting no's and knowing that you got to go for them, you got to rack up like 23 in a row before you find the treasure. It's life's way of testing you. It's life's way of seeing if you deserve it, if you want it enough, if you're willing to work for it, if you're willing to be yourself, even when you are being told over and over and over again that who you are is not a fit for this person or this company or this particular prospect. That's okay. Because every time that you're willing to show up and be yourself and still face the no, your confidence gets stronger, your intuition gets stronger, your courage gets stronger, and you earn karma. You earn the hard-won victories and the hard-won potential and the hard-won good credit because you're trying and you're showing up. The fact is, there are going to be days where you got to clean toilets. We're all humans. And that's just a fact. And so also don't get discouraged when you have a string of toilet days. That's just what life is like. You can keep going forward. And so the other thing that I wanted to say is that for a lot of you that are watching this conversation right now, I know that you've kind of hit a plateau in your business, or you're struggling to kind of get to the quote next level. One of the things that I want to tell you is that, first of all, Peter and I believe in you. That's why we're here. The second thing I want to tell you is you're 100% capable of doing the actions that will take you to the next level. The third thing I want to tell you is that you know what those actions are. The problem is you're spending all your time thinking about those actions, and that's a trap. That's where your self-doubt comes in. And what Peter and I want you to do is we want you to, first of all, acknowledge that you know what to do, acknowledge that you don't feel like doing it, or that you're scared like I am about taking my business to the next level and expanding into events, and do it anyway. Literally, that's the formula for success. You should give 0 fucks about how you feel. And you should really focus on what you need to do. Think about what it was like when you were a kid and your parents were so annoying because they didn't care about your excuses. They knew what you needed to do and they pushed you to do it. And so, Peter and I really want you to, first of all, feel the acknowledgement that you got this. Secondly, stop focusing on the shit you can't change and start focusing on the actions you can take and more positive thoughts, because it's really difficult to get to the next level when you're busy cheering against yourself.
Let's go back. And I want people to understand, because a lot of achievers, Mel, I've seen, they're so obsessed with the tactics. They're like, I don't need the motivation. I need business tactics. But they don't realize that a lot of the stuff that's holding them back, even if they had the tactics, is in their mind. So I'm glad you talk about this first, which is huge. Let's go back. So you're struggling. You're filed for bankruptcy. This is a couple years ago. And you're an 8-figure business. What was the steps? If someone is in that stage where they're struggling, they're frustrated, they don't feel like it, but they're maybe still taking action, but they're not at the level they're capable of. For you, do you remember the first couple steps when you were struggling on how you got out of it?
Yeah, so it all starts, it's so interesting because I just finished an interview with a group that are doing a movie about morning routines, Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning.
Oh, yeah.
And so it starts with your morning routine. And so, and here's why. So when I was stuck, and facing bankruptcy, and my husband and I were fighting, and I was unemployed, and his restaurant business was failing. So here you got this trifecta of just doo-doo all over the place. This was his dream to have this business. So now it's failing as an entrepreneur. I lost my job after stepping into the media business. Just one thing, fighting like crazy. And I had a terrible morning routine. I would hit the snooze alarm 5-6 times a morning. I would then mainline my phone and, read emails and surf social media. I would constantly eat bad food. The kids were always late for school. They were missing the bus constantly. It was like one decision after another that was horrible. Now, why was I making the decision to hit the snooze button 5 times? Because of my feelings. I felt overwhelmed. I felt terrified. I had tremendous anxiety. I felt like a loser. I had no confidence. I dreaded the day. All those feelings were driving my decisions. So, this is how I discovered the 5-second rule. It actually started as a simple hack in order to beat the snooze alarm. The alarm would go off. So I want to expand this moment, because I want you guys to understand the power of a 5-second decision. Your entire life, your entire business comes down to 5-second decisions, period. Do you make the phone call or not? Do you negotiate like a monster or not? Do you take the deal that sucks, or do you walk away from it or not? These are the decisions that define your business, and they happen in 5 seconds flat. You either expand into your power or you shrink. That's what happens. And so for me, here I was hitting the snooze alarm, and I knew I needed to stop it, but I didn't know how. So I invented this little trick, because here's what happens. The alarm would go off, and in a matter of seconds, I would feel dread. I would think about bankruptcy. I would feel the anxiety come from my stomach. My heart would start to race. My throat would get tight. I'd start to sweat. I'd think about the day ahead and all of our problems. And I would immediately feel incapable. And I would shrink and hit the snooze. And that was all taking place like that. Just like when you look at the phone call, you look at that phone and you know there's a call you need to make for your business. You've been thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. If you think about it for more than 5 seconds, you will come up with a reason not to make that call. You will. That's how our minds work. And so I decided, holy shit, this is happening like so fast. I got to move faster before my mind can talk me out of it. And so the first morning I used it, I went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and stood up. The next morning when I used it, I was surprised it worked again. The next morning when I used it, I couldn't believe it worked again. And then I noticed this, and this is what I want you all to take away. Your mind is designed to protect you. The second you hesitate, and it could be the smallest thing, guys. It could be that somebody's telling you that the split on the deal is going to be 60-40 and your gut's like, what the? No, it's not. But if you hesitate and you start to go, oh, they're a bigger partner than me and maybe I need this deal, you will within 5 seconds shrink, self-doubt will come in, and you will not own your power. But you can, if you move forward 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in that second, when you're like, wait a minute, 60-40, I don't think so. It's 50-50 or nothing, buddy. And you move, now you've interrupted the patterns that stop you, and you've taken control in a 5-second window. And you have also now developed this muscle where you're now starting to align action with instinct. Why is Jay-Z so successful? It's not because he sits around and he mainlines social media and he gives a hoot about what other people think. It's because he has an instinct, he goes for it. Why is Oprah so successful? Why is Steve Branson so successful? Why is anybody that you admire successful? It's not because they're lying in bed looking at social media. It's not because they sit around and doubt themselves. It's not because they eat a shit sandwich on a deal. It's because they've learned how to quiet the noise around them, to hear their instincts, and to move and lean into them. And that is the secret to your business. That's why you want to be an entrepreneur. It's not so that you can hide, it's so that you can expand. It's not so that you can live in fear of these phone calls. It's so that you can freaking pick up that phone and call anybody you want. That is your power. And I'm telling you right now, if you master this 5-second window, you win. And, look, Peter, it didn't even, so, how did I go? So now people are probably wondering, well, okay, fine. So you got up on time. How does that change things? I'll tell you how it changes anything. If you can master the ability to get up when you don't feel like it, that's the same thing as making a phone call when you don't feel like it. If you can master the ability to go to the gym when you're tired, that means you can work on that spreadsheet when you're tired. If you can master the ability to feel your emotions rise up at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, shut them down and speak to your spouse with respect, even though you're pissed, then you know how to manage your emotions in a business setting. So in 5-second windows, what you're doing is you're building the muscle of self-control. You're building the muscle of discipline. You're building the muscle of aligning your actions and your thoughts with the things that matter to you instead of letting your emotions trigger you and wig you out and take you off course. It's freaking amazing. So I would say for those of you that feel stuck, take a look at your routine because you have one in the morning. The first 30 minutes of your day are the most important because they set the tone. Do you get up on time? Do you make your bed? Do you spend the first 20 minutes planning your day and the one thing that's important to your business? Do you schedule the one thing you're going to do to make progress on your priority? Before anything else, don't look at your phone. Don't sleep next to your phone. That phone is crack cocaine. You do not need it. We have become the tool. That is supposed to be a tool for your business. Number 2 rule for you, do not put that freaking phone next to your bed. Do not do it.
I have a great story to tell you. And it's a story about the purpose of your dreams and why your dreams are not meant to be achieved. Not necessarily. Your dreams have a different purpose. And what your dreams are meant for is your dreams are meant
to act like a beacon outside of you, out in the future, something that's so inspiring that calls you through your fear, through your doubt, toward your dream. That's the purpose of the dream, to call you through your fear. And I've got an incredible story to tell you, because when you allow yourself to be pulled forward by your dreams and through your fears and through your doubts, and you work on the things that you really are inspired to do, what's meant for you will find you. So I want to take you back a couple of years when the 5-Second Rule book was launching. It came out in February of 2017. I was a self-published author. It was very important for me to self-publish the book because I wanted to make sure I owned the content. And being a self-published author is incredible, but you don't have the support of a massive traditional publisher. So you do everything on your own. And my dream at the time was to be a New York Times best-selling author. I had always dreamt of it. And I'd always dreamt of being number one, not just making the list, but being number one. And I worked so hard on that book. I put my life and everything I had into that book. And for 6 months, I did all of the things that you're supposed to do in order to sell as many books as you need to sell in order to make the New York Times bestseller list. And I'm saying for 6 months, I was schlepping books around to every speech and pre-selling copies and writing lists by hand of people's names so I could send them signed books when the book came out. And I was creating email campaigns and doing stuff on social media and networking with influencers. When I tell you for 6 months straight, I did nothing but try to figure out what I could do to try to reach my dream of being a New York Times bestselling author. I did everything you were supposed to do. So the week that the book comes on sale, the day that it happens, I send out a newsletter to our newsletter list. I tell everybody on social media. A bunch of my friends post about the book. And all of a sudden, sales start rolling in. I'm super excited. I'm getting texts from friends. I just bought your book. And about an hour later, I start getting emails from people saying, I tried to buy your book on Amazon, but it's out of stock. And I thought, that's unbelievable. Holy cow. I was so successful at marketing this book. I've worked so hard. I've been rewarded. We've sold through the tens of thousands of copies that our printing and publishing partner printed for us as a self-publishing. I was so excited. I was doing a happy dance. I thought all my hard work is paid off. My dreams are coming true. And then the emails started to come in. It's out of stock. It's out of stock. It's out of stock. And I start to think, I don't have that big of an email list. There must be something wrong. I couldn't have sold through that many books in an hour. And so I go to Amazon, and sure enough, the book is listed out of stock, which the book remained listed out of stock for the first several weeks that it was on sale. And it wasn't because we had sold all the books. Amazon listed my book as out of stock because we had sent so much traffic to Amazon, and I was a nobody. And Amazon had no idea who I was because I'm a self-published author. And when they get a surge of traffic on an unknown product like that, they list the book as out of stock until they can figure out what's going on in terms of the traffic and their actual inventory in the warehouse. Now, not knowing any better, I didn't know who to call. I had no power to change the situation. And so for 3 weeks, the book remained out of stock as all my marketing was happening, as I was appearing on podcasts, as I was showing up on like Tom Bilyeu's Impact Theory show and Lewis Howes' School of Greatness podcast. All of my effort was sending everybody to a page that listed the 5-second rule as out of stock. I felt like the world's biggest failure. I felt like God and the universe was punishing me. I regretted every decision I made to self-publish. I felt like there was something wrong with me.
because I had worked so hard to make this dream come true. And in that critical 3-week period, when all of my effort was supposed to be selling books, the variable of Amazon I could not control. And I literally cried every day. Every freaking day. And here's the one thing that saved me during that time. Because I just wanted to throw my hands in the air and say, everybody. Why has this always happened to me? I just was going down the pity party negative thought train. And this was the one thought that saved me. I kept saying, there's no way in hell, after working this hard, that the universe isn't going to reward me. There's no way in hell that I've worked this hard that the universe is not going to reward me. I would wake up every morning, I would check Amazon, it would say out of stock, I would start crying. All those negative feelings would come rushing in. I'd want to give up on my dream of being a New York Times best-selling, or hell, at this point, a best-selling author. But I would say, Mel, there's no way in hell that you're not going to get rewarded after working this hard. There must be something better that's coming. This is a mindset trick that will save you. There must be something better that's coming. And this gets back to my original point. Your dreams are not necessarily to be achieved. That's not their purpose. The purpose of your dreams is to pull the greatest part of you through your fears and your doubts, to make you do the work, to have you to start walking toward the thing that's calling you forth. Dreams call the best in you forth. That's the purpose of a dream. And I'm telling you right now, if you continue to work hard, if you continue to put your head down, if you continue to do everything you're supposed to do and you give up that timeline, you will be rewarded. And I promise you, there is something better that's in store for you, something you can't even imagine. That's exactly what happened to me. Because after 3 weeks of this crap going on, all of a sudden I get an email. And the email says, your monthly report is available. And it was an email from Audible. See, I had self-published the audiobook too. I had recorded it myself. My husband, Chris, had uploaded the files to the Amazon platform called ACX, which is what you self-publish audiobooks through. And I was so focused on having the hardcover make the New York Times bestseller list, I hadn't even remembered that there was an audiobook. And this whole time, this whole 3 weeks that the book was out of stock, and I'm crying every morning, and I'm pushing through, and I'm doing podcasts, and I'm doing all the things I had planned on doing, and beating myself up, but pushing myself forward, saying, Mel, there's no way you're not going to be rewarded. There is something better that's meant for you. Just keep going. Well, what happened is that entire 3 weeks, you guys, that I was working my tail off, crying every day, pushing forward, everybody was buying up the audiobook like toilet paper in a pandemic because it was the only thing that was available. When I got this sales report, I nearly fell out of my chair. I became the #1 audiobook on Audible for the entire year. And because the audiobook was so successful, Amazon got its inventory straightened out, and I became the 5th most read book on Amazon of that entire year in 2017. The 5-second rule audiobook has something crazy like 50,000 reviews. It's incredible. I'm so proud of it. And even more importantly, my hard work was rewarded because I've gone on to do 4 more audiobooks as Audible originals for Audible, something that never would have happened if I had had a successful hardcover campaign. Do you see? My dream of being a New York Times best-selling author, even the dream of being #1, The purpose of that dream was to make me work hard, to make me work for it. But that's not the dream that was meant for me at that moment in my life. Something better was meant for me, and I got it because I worked so hard for that dream of being a New York Times bestseller. Now, you want to know the kicker? I've never made the list. I've never made any traditional bestseller list. Of course, I dominate on Amazon, but the traditional stuff, never made it. I wasn't meant to. I was meant to let that dream of being a New York Times bestselling author pull me forward, make me work, make me believe. And in the work itself and in telling yourself you will be rewarded, you will get what's meant for you. I believe this with absolutely every ounce of my being. Absolutely every ounce of my being. You need your dreams. You cannot give up on your dreams, because when you give up your dreams, you give up on a part of yourself. And you need your dreams because they pull you through your fear. They pull you through this moment. They give you something bigger to work toward. They activate and energize something inside of you. But if your dreams aren't coming true, remember your friend Mel Robbins and remember this story that I told you, and you keep your head down and you keep working for it. Because I promise you, if you give up your timeline, if you keep putting in the work, you will be rewarded. And on those mornings where you wake up like I was waking up every morning and crying and making myself wrong, you flip your mindset and you remind yourself, there's no way you won't be rewarded when you work this hard. And you remind yourself that there is something better that's meant just for you. And that's why you haven't gotten what you thought you wanted yet. I love you.
I write about this story in the new book, The High Five Habit, and I'm going to take everybody back 4 years ago. So this is the first book. The High Five Habit is the first book that I have written and published in almost 5 years. Back in 2007, I released a book called The 5-Second Rule. And Lisa and her husband, Tom, played a pivotal role in one of the biggest professional breakdowns of my life. And they had no idea that it was happening at the time.
No clue.
And Lisa, I think you just found out about it by reading about it in chapter 12 of my new book.
Yep.
So here's what was going on. I had written the 5-Second Rule book. I had self-published it because I thought that that was the best thing to do. I had a dream of being a #1 New York Times bestselling author. And I put it up on my vision board, and I dreamed about it, and I thought about it, and I studied all the authors that we all admire, and I did my best to do all the things that you are supposed to do in order to sell enough books to grace the New York Times bestseller list, right? So I email my newsletter list, and I am doing speeches all over the place, and I'm pre-selling books as best I can in the back of a room with my pad of paper, taking people's, like literally for months. I did everything I could. And when the book came out, I sent the email out to everybody. And folks on my email list and everybody I'm related to immediately went to Amazon to buy the book. And here's what happened. Within an hour or two, the book was listed as out of stock. Now, I thought, yes, yes, I have won. I am a best-selling author. I have sold out of Amazon in a matter of a few hours. Oh my God. This like literally, this proves all the things that everybody said about me in middle school is not true anymore. I've done it, Lisa. And then I started to realize I had not sold all the books. Because I had 20,000 books at Amazon. I did not have that many people on my email list. And people started to email back going, it's out of stock, it's out of stock, it's out of stock.
Like, you think your dream, like the height of your freaking dreams come true at this point?
Yes, I think I've done it. Like, I've sold, like, I am a success. I am a phenomenon. This is unbelievable. I think the dreams are coming true. And then within a couple hours, people start emailing going, it's out of stock, Mel, it's out of stock, it's out of stock, it's out of stock. It dawns on me, there's no way I sold 20,000 books. There's no fucking way. I call the printer that I worked with, that helped me self-publish, and it's a little self-publishing publisher. And he tells me that he's seen this happen before, where when Amazon gets a flood of traffic to something that they're not expecting, they will turn off supply to make sure it's not a bunch of bots and to also check inventory. And we had no ability to figure this out. So for the first couple weeks that the book was available, it was out of stock. So here I am in this 2-week period where I have worked my ass off. I have done everything you're supposed to do, Lisa. And my book is out of stock. I have sent my entire marketing campaign to a product you can't get. And I'm thinking, why are you doing this to me, universe? I have worked hard. Why do I have to be the bad news bearers? Why am I not part of that super awesome group of best-selling authors? When is it going to be my turn? And I start to go down the drain. Enter Tom and Lisa Bilyeu. So when I come here and I am doing your show, I show up here and I'm like, this is my last hope. Because by the time this thing gets on air, maybe the book will be available. I have got to pull myself together. So I walk in here and I was just, I didn't know you yet because I only knew impact theory and I'd only seen it. I knew this was a big deal. I knew that being on Tom's show could really change things for me. And I walk in here and I feel like a complete failure. You are lovely and delightful. And I immediately start feeling like I don't freaking belong here. I mean, they just had this best-selling author and that best-selling author and this famous person was just here. What am I doing here? I am a self-published author with a book that's out of stock. I'm failing. I hope that they don't know because this is terrible. He is going to figure out before I enter the set that I don't belong here.
You think imposter syndrome galore?
Oh, completely. So I'm upstairs in the bathroom and I am having a case, no kidding, of stress diarrhea. I have got to empty the bowels because I am so sure that I'm about to be called out for the fraud that I am, that the book is not successful, that Tom's made a mistake. I look at the mirror, my cheeks are as red as a baboon's ass. I am sweating profusely. I've got pit stains on my red shirt. And then there's a knock on the door. We're ready for you, Mel. I splash water on my face. I literally am like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, pull your shit together, Mel, get the fuck out there. And I open up the door and I go.
I was like, oh my God, Mel freaking Robbins. This woman is amazing. This woman is so freaking badass. Oh my God, she's got confidence to wear funky shoes. Oh my God, this woman is I'm in awe. And so I'm like, do I have the right to talk to her?
Oh,
I'm
for God's sake.
But I'm like, can I ask her how the book is going? I'm all tense. I'm all nervous. I'm okay. Okay, is the team right? Are we impressing her? Does she have her right coffee? I'm in my own freaking head. And it's so funny. Again, why I want to bring this up is how different our perspectives were. I was in fucking awe of you, girl. And I still am. But I was like, you're on a pedestal and you get on set and you sit down. And the first question, you're like, motivation is garbage. And I was like, this woman is the most confident, strong woman I've ever met in my life.
Well, because, that's what fell out of my mouth because I was basically having a panic attack in your bathroom. So motivation is garbage. I wasn't feeling motivated when I walked on that set. I was feeling scared. And one of the things that you believe that I believe too is that your feelings are going to rise and they're going to fall. And feeling nervous and feeling scared and feeling on edge and imposter syndrome, it's all normal stuff. You got to develop the ability to feel all that stuff, have your cheeks be as red as a baboon's butt, and walk out there and do it anyway. That's what you've got to develop in life. Mm-hmm. And that moment taught me that. And there was something else that happened. So when I left that set, the whole time that the book was out of stock and I'm sitting here going, woe is me, and I've failed again, and I screw everything up, and why doesn't anything ever work out for me? I would catch myself and I would say this: there's no way, Mel, that you've worked this hard, that something amazing isn't going to happen. You have to keep going. You have to believe that this moment is preparing you for something amazing that hasn't happened yet. That was the mantra that had deep meaning for me in this moment, because it was a way for me to take an attitude that was going down the toilet and flip it into what I call a high five attitude that was more empowering and supportive and encouraging. And so I kept repeating it, Lisa. There's no way something isn't going to happen when you work this hard. This moment is preparing you. It's giving you an experience, a person, a skill, something, Mel, that you need because something amazing is coming. You don't know it, but something amazing is coming. That gave me the resilience to keep going, even though the book was out of stock, even though by all measures I had failed. So your interview releases, and I all of a sudden get this email from Audible. I had forgotten that I had published an audiobook. I had self-published that too. My husband had uploaded it himself to the Amazon platform called ACX, which is a self-publishing platform for Audible. I had completely forgotten about the audiobook because I was so focused on this New York Times things. And by the way, here's another thing. You can't make the New York Times list if you're a self-published author. Something I didn't even know when I started. So here I thought I'd fail, didn't achieve my dream, the whole thing. I get this email. Your monthly report is ready. And I'm like, monthly report? What are they talking about? I click on that report. I open it up. I am literally like, oh my God, audiobooks. Audiobooks? Who knew audiobooks were a thing? Here's what happened. The entire time that I kept going, something amazing was happening, Lisa. They were going to the hardcover, but it wasn't available. They bought the only thing that was available, the audiobook. The 5-second rule became the #1 audiobook of the year, Lisa. It, to this day, is the most successful self-published audiobook in the history of Audible. And it created a brand new partnership that I have with Audible. Something, by the way, that I never would have had happen had my hardcover campaign be successful. And here's the other thing. I have never achieved my goal of being a New York Times bestselling author, and I might never achieve it. I've never made a traditional bestseller list. And it proves something that I believe very deeply. And that is that your dreams and the things that you put on your vision board have a very important purpose. They pull you through your fears. They inspire you to take action, but they are not necessarily meant to be achieved. I believe when you pursue your dreams and you keep going and you keep telling yourself that if I work hard, something amazing is going to happen, you'll achieve something better, something that you don't even know or can even think about right now because it's not even on your radar screen. Those dreams are dots on the map of your life that pull you in a direction you're meant to go. But you might never end up there because you're meant to end up somewhere else.
I actually have an incredible quote of yours about dreams. You say, when it comes to your dreams, you have two choices: pursue them or be haunted by them.
It's true. You can't forget a dream. You can't.
You know, I am fascinated by how many jobs that you've had.
Oh my God.
And I have to go here because I think it's so important, especially when you talk about being prepared for something and also the time it takes to build. And I want you to share because a lot of people are doing a lot of different things right now, trying to figure it out, trying to realign, trying to pivot. We've all heard it. So can we share with people like how many jobs you've had?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I love that you're asking me how many jobs I've had in my lifetime. So I'm 53. And I believe absolutely everything that you do is preparing you for something amazing that's coming. That hasn't happened yet. Everything. And almost every job that I've ever had gave me a life lesson that I have used in a very pivotal moment in my life.
Right.
And so let's go through them all because I come from a very hardworking, working class family.
Right.
Farmers, machinists, bakers, maids,
Like, this is my miners, like, this is hard working. This is what we do. Yes, my dad and mom put my dad through medical school, but he's like the first professional in the generations of people that I'm related to. So I started working young. So I was a babysitter. There's one. I was a lifeguard. I taught tennis lessons. I would sub on a paper route when kids could have paper routes. I then was a hostess and a busser at a restaurant. I was a short order cook. I was a waitress. I was a bartender. I always worked in college. So I worked at a cafe, and then I became a baker and baked bread on the morning shift. And then I worked for a temp agency after college. And then I got assigned to be a paralegal. And then during the summer, during law school and during law school, I would clerk at like the DA's office or, at a law firm. After law school, I was a public defender in New York City for legal aid doing criminal defense work. That's 15. We're on 15 and I'm only 23.
Wow.
15 jobs. Then I worked for a large law firm in Boston. I hated that job. Then I worked for a digital marketing company, a content company called eMode, morphed into Tickle. Then I worked for another one. Then I got fired from that job from Bullhorn. This would have been 2000. Then I worked for a digital marketing agency. So now what are we even at? We're at job 19.
Wow.
And I'm 30.
Wow.
And I've got 2 kids.
Wow.
And then I trained to become a life coach. And that was 2001. So I'm now life coaching and working part-time until I have enough money to be able to life coach full-time. I do that for a couple years. And the life coaching has somebody write an article about me. And that leads to me getting a paid position on CNBC to be a commentator. So we're at 21 jobs now. Then I get offered a reality show from Fox that was supposed to be like a business makeover show, like Extreme Business Makeover Show. And that's a whole horror story because they changed the television show to being Make Over the Office to we're going to fire people on national TV. Thankfully, it never aired. Then I lost that job. Chris's restaurant started failing. We were 800 grand in debt. That's when I launched the 5-second rule. So we are now at, where are we even? 27 jobs? 22 jobs? I don't even know where we are at this point. I'm literally in 2008, $800,000 in debt, unemployed because I'm fired from the show from Fox when it doesn't air. I used the 5-second rule to get out of bed in 2008 and I get a job. I beg a former coaching client to give me a part-time gig, helping them with office operations because I need to pay my bills.
Wow.
I auditioned for a Saturday morning radio show because I just thought, okay, I need the $50 and it's on Saturday mornings and I get it. So that show then expands into a weekday show. We're now at 30 jobs.
Wow.
30 jobs. And I am now in 2011. So that would have been 10 years ago. So I'm 43, 30 jobs by the time I'm 43.
Wow.
I then give that TEDx talk, which launches my speaking career. I then, because of my...
If you haven't listened to that, go check it out.
my radio show, that's 5 days a week, wins an award in CNN calls. So suddenly I find myself with a full-time job with CNN as a paid commentator doing legal commentary on some of the biggest social justice cases in this nation's history, from the murder of Trayvon Martin to Freddie Gray to Tamir Rice to Michael Brown to Eric Garner. I was there on television unpacking these issues for anybody watching. It was just an extraordinary experience. And, again, what prepared me for that? Representing people at Legal Aid and understanding being somebody in the system fighting systematic biases and discrimination every single day as a criminal defense attorney.
Wow.
What it actually means. That prepared me for that moment. Where are we? CNN. I don't even know where we're at. Oh, and the speaking career then takes off and I'm speaking. And then people start to write to me about the 5-second rule. So I write a book. And then I realize I could actually help more people by doing courses. So I start creating courses. And then the book's so successful that Audible comes to us and said, would you produce more audio content? So we start an audio content production division in the company. And then Sony Pictures comes to me and says, would you be willing to host a daytime syndicated talk show? I think we're up to like 36 jobs at this point.
It's amazing.
And I'm 50 years old. And each and everything I've ever done has been a dot on the map of my life, preparing me for something that was coming next.
That's so powerful. And I'm
not done.
I know,
I'm
right?
not done.
She's not done.
I got another 30 jobs in me, at least. At least.
I love that. And I love that you just give yourself permission. And I think that's what you did well in the book, as well as like take us through some of those stories and really allow people to feel that you're going to have times when you feel like a failure, but you're not. It's just preparing you for that next moment. And I think a lot of people need to hear that right now.
You're getting the external success, but inside you are eating yourself up with worry, right? Then we fast forward, let's say 9-10 years. April 2020, you are successful speaker, motivational coach, best-selling author, and you're struggling with self-doubt in front of the mirror. So is there this slight clash here somewhere where actually you can be successful and not love yourself and be racked with self-doubt?
I think everybody is.
Yeah.
Success is not the source of self-love. In fact, most people who are successful or competitive or entrepreneurs, most people are chasing that success because they have married their self-worth with achievement. And I was the same.
Yeah.
And so right there.
Me too.
And so this is, by the way, evidence that you have a problem with self-rejection and with self-worth and with self-criticism, because you believe you are only worthy of love and you are only worthy of support if you have achieved the thing.
So someone's looking at you and thinking, man, I wish I was Mel Robbins, right? We'll talk about jealousy if we get to it later, but they might be jealous of you in a nice way. They might think, man, I wish I had a viral TED Talk like Mel. I wish I had multiple international bestsellers.
Great, write them.
Right?
Great, apply for one.
Yeah.
You can do it. If I can freaking do it, you can do it.
But they might also be thinking, well, that is success. You've had that even though you were racked with these problems on the inside.
Yeah.
And they may think, I'll take that. I'll take that success. And I think this comes to this wider societal point, which is we confuse sometimes success with happiness.
When you anchor your happiness to doing things, it's always out of your control. When you anchor success to the crap you achieve, it is always a moving target.
Yeah.
And so, it's a really hard concept to wrap your brain around, because first of all, there's the research that shows, at least in Western countries, that, there's the baseline with money. 75 grand is the baseline, that when somebody makes 75 grand or more, there's this happiness thing that I can't remember how the exact study goes, but it makes a lot of sense, because as somebody who could not pay groceries with 3 kids, as somebody who had liens on her house, as somebody who was getting the bankruptcy letters in the mail, as somebody who was unemployed during this whole thing, and whose husband was bouncing the payroll checks and was running from one restaurant to the other to hide from the collectors that were showing up. I know what it's like to live with the constant, relentless pressure that comes from having no money.
Yeah.
And until you can get yourself to a state where you can take a deep breath and you can pay the bill and you can buy some groceries and you can put some gas in the car and the phone rings and it's not a collector, you are going to live a stressed out life because your basic needs are under threat.
Yeah.
And that is a horrendously triggering thing to live through. And we lived through it for several years it was like that.
Yeah.
And so, there is a certain level of economic stability that has a direct impact on your happiness, on your safety as a person, and your ability to experience less stress. So I just wanted to be, responsible about that because I've freaking lived it. And, but I do think that, look, I use the 5-second rule. I certainly have found my calling. I love building stuff. I'm incredible as a businesswoman. I love the game of making money. I love being smart in deal making. I love content syndication. I'm super excited for NFTs and for how blockchain is going to change the role of being a creator. And so there's a part of this that's a real expression for me in terms of building a business. And the 5-second rule helped me take action. And the 5-second rule made me very productive. And the 5-second rule had me go, no, I don't want to do a talk show. No, I don't want to do a talk show. No, I do not want to do a talk show. Why are we still talking? This is interesting. When you say no, people want you more. I wish I knew that a long time ago. But so I, for sure, use the 5-second rule to push myself to take the actions that have made me wildly successful. But that doesn't change the fact that I would look in the mirror and still see a person that I didn't like. And that as soon as the 5-second rule book came out, like I'll give you an example. So I write the High Five Habit book. I'm practicing these tools, and I am also human. So when we get word 2 weeks before the book comes out that the big box stores like Target and Walmart in the United States are passing on my book because I'm not a known author, I get triggered. I punch the wall. I pour a gin martini, light up a joint. I call a bunch of friends and bitch up a storm. I am literally reliving being left out at a sleepover in middle school. I've got this gigantic, ridiculous story that, I'm always left out. I'm never part of the group. Like there's this group of like real authors that are all friends that all promote, I have the whole thing. I'm human.
Put the record out, just press play.
Yes, exactly. I tend to be like angry, depressed kind of person, like breaking stuff. And then I wake up in the morning and I drag myself into the bathroom and I look at myself in the mirror and I have compassion. I'm like, you're right, that sucks. You are a known author. You deserve to have your work be in places where people can find it. It doesn't feel fair. And you know what? You're going to be okay. And so the high five becomes this, it's like a life jacket in the waves of life that keeps you above these waves so that they knock you over, they tumble you around, but then you climb back up. You reassure yourself. And I have this thing that is embodied in the high five. So the high five is also a wildly realistic, optimistic mindset. So part of what I am constantly doing, and I do this as a mother too. So we have a 23-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And every day in everybody's life, there is stuff that happens that sucks. There are friends that go out to lunch that don't invite you. There are people that tell you no. There are schools you don't get into. There are apartments that somebody else gets. There's boyfriends and girlfriends that break up with you. There are people that have cooler clothes and nicer cars and parents who throw the parties. And, there's always going to be something that makes you feel like life is out to get you. Things aren't fair. People don't like you. It's just like a tweak, right? It's triggering your insecurity. And I have this saying that I developed that, again, it embodies this high five, which for me, also having run a marathon, the only reason why I made it across that finish line is because every stranger's high five said, I believe you can keep going. That's what the high five said to me. I see you, Mel. I see that you're limping. Keep going, girl. And so my mindset, whenever I'm working for something and I don't get it, and I feel the sting of rejection or disappointment, I always say to myself, and I say this to my kids on repeat too. I say, look, when you work hard, you're going to be rewarded. You have to believe that this moment is preparing you for something better, that you didn't get this thing because something better is coming. And, so there have been a couple of those. Like, for example, the High Five Habit audiobook is unreal. I mean, I record it. It is the #1 selling audiobook on all of Audible ever since it's been out in terms of the number of downloads in 1 month. Like, it's just destroying it. And I know you don't like that word, but it is destroying audiobook. It has been reported in the AP. It has been reported in all these places. Wow. It is in the charts, #1. And we are destroying it on the Amazon charts because people are reading it and loving it and sharing it. And I freaking love it because it tells me like that the tool is spreading.
Yeah.
Because my books, like your books, are just vehicles for ideas to get out. So then people can talk about them. And obviously, I put all this stuff online for free anyway. So if you can't afford the book, you're listening to this podcast. Yeah. Like you're going to get. But so the New York Times puts out a monthly audiobook list. I self-published the audiobook. And in the back of my mind, I was saying, don't get your hopes up, Mel. Don't get your hopes up. You're not a publisher. You're a self-published author. They're very fancy over there. And so the audiobook list came out for the month of October. I clearly destroyed it. Like, I'm clearly the audiobook. We don't even make it. Like a complete and utter intentional snub. That was another night where I punched a wall and drank a couple martinis and lit up a joint and called a bunch of friends and felt really sorry for myself. And the next morning, I literally high-fived myself in the mirror. It took about 4 mornings of high-fiving myself to get over that sting because it felt personal. But I kept saying, something better's coming, something better's coming. Do you know, I figured out the better thing that's coming. Well, first of all, actual sales are better than a list. So let's just get that straight. But I'm human. We all want to be recognized. I was in the New York Times crossword puzzle today.
Today?
Yes. Isn't that not crazy?
For the high five.
It is the coolest thing.
That's cooler than being a New York Times bestseller, I reckon.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I think it is. It's a smaller club.
I'm literally getting off the train and my text messages are blowing up from mates from the United States. And they've screenshot this and it says literally a 3-word down on the New York Times. And it said, motivational speaker, Robbins. And it was me.
Oh.
And you know what it was that made me so just blown away is that I underestimate the fact that people know who I am. I think that I am a person who has really screwed up a lot. And for a very long time, I have lived inside a body that was racked with anxiety and fight or flight and doubt and judgment. And it has been really hard to live in this body. Yes, I've been high functioning. Yes, I have still gotten okay grades. I've gone to great schools. I've had friends. I've been married for 25 years, but it has been a real bitch to live with this much unedgedness, this much stress, this much self-imposed condemnation, this constant, relentless drumbeat of what's wrong and someone's mad at me and I've screwed up again and just constantly feeling like nobody likes me and I can never do it right and it's all never going to work. And just this grinding feeling that when I finally started to attack the anxiety and understand it, when I finally started dealing with the childhood trauma that created a dysregulated nervous system in the first place, when I finally understood what was going on and came face to face with the woman in the mirror, and I started getting help and finding a new way, because I didn't want to continue living a life where I felt that stressed out and that anxious and that worried, and where the constant just noise in my head was negative. Now, through the 5-second rule, through EMDR and psychedelic guided therapy, through traditional talk therapy, through the high five habit and practicing that since April of 2020, I have a totally different experience of being alive. And if I can save anybody the headaches, the heartaches, the struggles that I have been through, that I now realize that you have very simple tools at your disposal that you can use to move the needle on the things that are making you feel anxious and stressed and unhappy and just constantly on edge, that you can come back home inside yourself and reconnect with your true nature. You know, if you think about our true nature, we're wired for love. We're wired for connection. We're born accepting ourselves. Like when a 4-year-old sees a mirror, they don't back up and say, God, my thighs are fat, and look at that nose and my hair. No, they like are, woo, they're twirling. They love themselves. That's your true nature.
Yeah.
That's why a high five from a stranger feels amazing, because it cuts down to the core of who you really are. A person who deserves to be seen, a person who deserves to be celebrated. And it begins with you.
Yeah, it's so powerful, Mel. As you were describing your different experience of life now, you're still successful as you were, but you experience it differently. There's a calmness, there's a groundedness, I guess, with it, is what I hear. And it reminds me of a phrase that my friend Pippa Grange, she's a psychologist. She used to help the England football team a few years ago. And she has this term, winning shallow or winning deep. Sorry to interrupt. If you are enjoying this content, there's loads more just like it on my channel. So please do take a moment to press subscribe, hit the notification bell, and now back to the conversation. And it really epitomizes that. She's dealt with so many.
Wow.
She's brilliant, and it's such a great phrase, because she's dealt with, you know, elite Premier League footballers, and you know, they've been walking up the steps to win the trophy, and on the inside they're feeling nothing. They thought from a young age, from the age of 8, I'll keep training, I'll get for a big club, we'll get into the cup, we'll win it, because they thought, like many overachievers, that actually winning that medal, getting that number, getting that job, getting the house, getting the car would make them happy. But it doesn't, because it's an inside job. And that's where I think this high five habit, it's not going to change everything, but it makes everything much easier. You know, you've still had therapy. Like, I feel someone who, let's say they've got childhood trauma.
Yeah, I do. Everybody does.
And who doesn't, really?
Yeah, everybody does, yeah.
On some level. And it's too hard for them to even address it and actually go and see someone. Well, the high five habit, I think, is your way in.
Oh, of course, yeah. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.